Welcome to Innings Insights, the ultimate destination for all things baseball. I'm host Brayden and joining me is co-host Chris Blanco. And today marks the inaugural episode of our podcast, and we have an exciting lineup for you today.
That's right, Brayden. We are diving into the standouts that we've seen so far in spring training. We're going to discuss some of the recent signings that have happened around baseball, and at the end, we are going to talk about the interesting influence that the so-called super agent Scott Boras has had on Major League Baseball so far.
Yeah, well, let's kick things off right away with a look at some players who are turning heads this spring. We have prospects shining, people we've never heard of coming up and really making a fight for the team's roster, and veterans that are also trying to fight for a roster who might be at the back end of their career, trying to fine-tune some of their skills, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The one person I want to talk about most notably, not really a rookie by any means. You've probably heard of him before, Juan Soto.
Oh, yeah.
Heard of him?
I think I've heard of him. New Yankee.
New Yankee.
Came over in a trade from San Diego, yep.
I don't know if I was the biggest fan of the trade, to be honest with you, especially for the Yankees, because I'm getting him for 1 year, and they gave up a lot for him. But obviously, he's going to be
7-player trade, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right. I didn't realize that he had 35 home runs last year. He's probably going to hit 45 being in Yankee Stadium.
And you know what? Everybody was talking about how much he declined last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he still put up some big numbers.
35 home runs.
That's a lot of home runs.
35 home runs, 132 walks,
Ooh.
Which is insane. Led the majors.
Well. Yeah.
But anyway, this spring training, he's only played in 5 games. Keep that in mind. But he's batting .583 with an OPS of 2143.
Unbelievable.
That's crazy.
Now, let's talk a little fantasy here, because you and I both like some fantasy. Do you see him going in drafts over guys like Ronald Acuna Jr. this year? No.
I think Acuna is probably number 1 overall. I know he's got that bit of a knee injury from that ACL tear from a couple years ago, but
right.
I think Acuna is still number 1. Soto's probably 3. I would say Mookie Betts is probably going over Soto too.
Interesting. Okay. Now, odd enough that we're talking about Yankee Stadium, right? We know everybody makes fun of the Little League Stadium in the major leagues, right? That short porch all around.
Yeah.
Baseball Reference has his projected home runs at 28 for 2024.
I noticed that, and I don't know where they're getting that from, because he had 35 in San Diego.
34 in Washington, right? 29 in 2021. He was an all-star that year. 35 in San Diego.
Which is not a small ballpark.
Not at all. Especially for the lefties, right? And so, I don't know, 28, that seems like, if I'm a betting man, I'm taking the over without a doubt.
Exactly. I'm definitely taking the over on that. I think if he had 35 last year, there's no way he doesn't hit 40, especially if he has Judge hitting behind him with some protection in that lineup. They're not going to walk him.
Yeah, and how do you think the recent acquisition of Juan Soto, how do you think it boosts the chances for the Yankees playoffs? We hear Yankees fans on different programs talking about, they're still not a playoff team. They can't compete with Tampa Bay, Baltimore's up there, and Toronto. I think that the Yankees are clear frontrunners for the playoffs, and I think that they are potential World Series contenders as well, especially with the addition of Soto. That lineup is just deadly, right? You got Judge in there, Soto, Anthony Volpe's going to have a bounce-back year for sure.
I hope so.
I mean,
don't forget about Stanton. Skinny Stanton.
Skinny Stanton. What's up with that?
I don't know.
Where did that come
from? I don't know what happened there, but he does not look the same.
What kind of diet is he on? I need to go on that diet.
I know, another feeling. But I do see them going to the playoffs, but there's no way they're beating Baltimore.
Really?
They're beating Baltimore?
I don't know.
Rushman, Henderson, Holiday, Cedric Mullins, Mountcastle.
And Corbin Burns now?
Corbin Burns at the top of the line.
Kyle Bradish going to start the year on the IL.
John Means, I'm pretty high on
as well. Felix Bautista's not there either, so
that's true. But
back into that bullpen. Cedric Mullins, I believe, is out with a hamstring injury still.
And then Anthony Santander, I think one of the most underrated players in baseball.
He's very good. Very good.
Yeah, definitely. Who did you want to talk about?
Well, I've got my guy, the skinny left-hander, southpaw, coming at you with that nasty windup, Chris Sale. This spring, he's just been lights out. You know, you look at the film, this guy hasn't played much baseball the last couple of years. He's been injured a lot. In 4 2/3 innings, he's got 9 strikeouts. He's got a whip of 1.071. His Ks per nine in spring is 17.4.
Which is just
That's absolutely disgusting. And I mean, you look at the pitches that he's throwing out there. That slider coming at you from the left side, going away to lefties and coming in at your back foot, if you're a righty, is absolutely filthy. Adding Chris Sale to the Braves, to that already dominant rotation, that dominant team already, I think just gives them even more of a chance to secure the National League East, that division out there. I mean, there's really no competition. The Mets on paper are a really good team, but you have to actually get into some action, because last year we all thought, okay, this Mets team is just going to really compete with the Braves, and they didn't. And they didn't even make the playoffs. So,
okay, here's the thing with them. Last year, they didn't do that. They had Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander.
Yep.
They don't even have any pitchers. Kota Senga's hurt. He's going to be out for a while.
They're both gone now. Both guys started the year on the Mets and ended the year on different teams.
The 2 Texas teams.
That's right. But like you said, Senga's going to be out for a while. He's hurt.
So, like, Jose Quintana is going to be their
He's the guy
ace.
Now, I suppose. And I really don't see the Mets with any chance. Now the Phillies, now you could argue the third place Phillies, since they were fourth place Phillies.
They were definitely the fourth place Phillies for a while, but they have incredible
really
locking up Wheeler.
That's
locking
big.
up Wheeler for the next 3 years, $126 million.
Yep.
Crazy.
3 years.
Insane.
Big spenders.
I think it's $42 million. AAV on that contract, which is just insane.
That is.
I don't know if he's necessarily worth it, but he's definitely an ace. But I want to go back to Chris Sale for a second. If you look at his baseball reference page, he has the highest strikeout per 9 in baseball history for a career.
Does he?
It is gold.
11.1 strikeouts per 9.
11.1. So, if you believe in him at all.
I mean, he was the strikeout guy, and the reason that he couldn't stay healthy was because of that funky windup and the stress that he was putting onto his arm and the rest of his body. Now, if you look at the projections for this year, he's projected with a 4.3 ERA, finishing only 112 innings pitched, 122 strikeouts in those 112 innings, with a K per 9 of 9.8. So really, they're not giving him much credit either. Same thing with Soto. I don't know where they get these projections from, because I don't agree with them at all. But you know what? I think he brings that firepower on the mound, and I think that the Braves are really going to benefit from adding him to that rotation with Max Fried, Bryce
Elder,
Spencer
Strider, and Charlie Morton.
Oh, Spencer Strider, my guy, did some magic for my fantasy.
Hold on. Here's the thing. I want to bring him up because I'm looking at his projections for 2024. He's only projected to have 226 strikeouts.
Oof.
In 161 innings.
Easily a 300 strikeout guy next year.
It's still 12.6 strikeout per 9, which is insane.
Yeah,
but
that's unbelievable.
My goodness, he's so good. That Braves team is incredible, and Chris Sale's going to be a big part of it.
They're a young team. They've got their guys locked up for a while. Acuna's locked up. Austin Riley's locked up.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be good for a really long time.
Albies.
Yep. Albies, the guy that they say is overrated.
Okay, there's someone else I want to talk about, though, before we move on.
Let's hear it.
Future star catcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Henry Davis.
Henry Davis. Big Henry.
#1 overall pick. This guy's played in 7 games. He's got a 12.14 OPS. Batting .333, 3 home runs, which is tied for the most in all of baseball. I know he didn't have the best first rookie season last year, but
negative WAR. He had a negative WAR last season.
He did, but how many plate appearances? Because I don't think he played that long.
225.
Yeah, exactly.
So, a small sample size there, right?
Definitely, but my goodness, he's going to be good. He's going to be really good.
Sounds like it. Well, let's transition over into the Giants picking up Matt Chapman. It's a big splash in the Bay. Former Athletic, former Gold Glove, Platinum Glove winner, and Cody Bellinger is going back to the Cubs.
Yeah, two very interesting signings from two Scott Boras clients.
Oh yeah, Chapman,
Short-term contracts.
short term, both 3-year deals, both with opt
Mm-hmm.
outs in the first 2 years. Chapman's move to the Giants, I think, adds more firepower to that lineup. You got Jung Hoo Lee there that came, Jorge Soler there as well. It's a 3-year, $54 million deal with opt outs after the first 2 years for Matt Chapman. And I think it's a great deal for the Giants because his original asking price was in the 150 millions. The Blue Jays
Mm-hmm.
had offered him 100 million, which he declined, and then the Giants got him for 54 million on a 3-year deal. So low risk, high reward kind of thing with opt outs and
You
a mutual option for the third year.
for yeah. No, what are the odds that he opts out after the first year? As a Giants fan myself,
Yeah,
I want him
we
to do
both are.
well. I want him to do well because obviously I want the team to do well this year. But if he does well, he's definitely opting out of that contract. So there's no way he stays longer than
Kind
that.
of like Rodon did after his second year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for a team like the Giants that heavily relies on the defense, the pitchers, get the ground ball. I think that this is a great signing for the hot corner. Pitching staff doesn't really strike people out. What do you think this
Not at
means for
all.
the National League West now? And do you think that they're going to be up there with the Padres? Maybe, dare we say, the Dodgers in the West?
I'm going to say no on the Dodgers part. I think that they're going to run away with it. Even last year, the standings were just an embarrassment with how far ahead they were,
Yeah.
and they've only gotten way better with the additions of obviously Otani and Yamamoto, not to mention others. But I think the Giants can maybe fight for second place. Is that bad to say? Sorry, Diamondbacks fans.
No, I mean, I agree with you totally. Let's see, the Giants last year had they're ranked 30th in the league with .72 errors a game. Yeah, the another thing that the Giants didn't steal bases at all.
No, I think they last in stolen bases,
I think they were last in stolen bases last year.
and now
The
is
stolen
that
base leader
just
was Tyro Estrada.
right? What 22?
He had
I don't
21.
have it in front of me.
He did. He had 21 stolen bases, and the next
And didn't
closest,
this was 4?
I think, it was 5, tied for 2 with Michael Conforto
And
and Blake Sable. That's right. Yep.
hmm yeah,
Um,
it's crazy. Now, do you think that that's just the team not being fast, or do you think that was like a Gabe Kapler don't run kind of
it
thing?
was definitely a Gabe Kapler. We're gonna play station to station statistical baseball crap that Gabe Kapler brought to the Giants. I liked
Hmm.
Kapler for 1 year, and that was the 1 year he was successful. But I was very glad that we got Bob Melvin and a couple of the old Giants guys back, Matt Williams, Pat Burrell. And now, as for my view, obviously the biased Giants fan in me wants to say we're gonna have another magical year and this is gonna be great. We're gonna win the West and disappoint everybody. But when you look at the Dodgers, you can't, even as a biased fan, say that we're even in the same world as the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Will Smith, Shohei Otani, Yamamoto. Uh, the list just goes on and
Muncie.
on. Max Muncy, who's the Giants killer.
Hmm.
I just don't see a world where we win the West. Now, second place, I can definitely argue second place. The Padres, the last couple years, you think they got it, and then they fall apart, and they don't have it. Tatis can very rarely stay healthy. Machado and him, had that little disagreement back in the day, but it looks like they kind of got over it.
Hmm.
Machado's a much more mature player than he was in Baltimore, so we'll kind of see how it goes. I'm not high on the Padres this year. I am very high on the Diamondbacks, and I think that they are going to do great things. But
Let me ask you this about the Giants and their chances. Would signing a top level pitcher put you as like a for sure they're passing the Diamondbacks if they sign Blake Snell, for instance?
I think, well, the weird thing about Blake Snell for me is I don't see the hype. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think he's as good as everybody says he is. Yes, he won the Cy Young twice, but when you look at the walks compared to the strikeouts and the innings that he throws, the guy never goes past the fourth inning. The one time that he should have, Kevin Cash pulled him from the game and they lost the world. It's not a real World Series, but they lost regardless. So I personally would prefer Jordan Montgomery. Either way you spin it, I think either one of those guys locks the Giants into the playoffs. I think right now we're on the fence between are we a wild card team or are we not? It could go either way depending on how the lineup does, how Alex Cobb performs coming back off of an injury, what we'll get out of Robbie Ray. These guys aren't going to be back till at least after the All-Star break, I'm hearing, so we'll have to wait and see. But, Alex Cobb is getting old. He ain't getting any younger.
Is he 37, 38 years old?
Yeah, he had a nice year last year and the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
But,
yes, he did.
I just don't know. Now, Kyle Harrison, I'm confident in. Small sample size we got from him last year. It wasn't too great. Wasn't anything that set off any alarms. I do think that the rotation is definitely the weakest link on that Giants roster.
Absolutely. And talking about Kyle Harrison, what was it that he had that was it the home opener or not the home opener, but
His home debut.
His home debut.
Yep.
But didn't he carve up? Was it the Dodgers?
The Reds.
It was the Reds.
Struck out 11 over 6 1/3.
Shutout.
Correct. No.
Yeah.
Maybe 4-1. The final score was 4-1 of that game.
Okay.
So there you go. 4.2 ERA. They're projecting him at. Last year, a 4.1 ERA, 9.1 K per 9 in 34 innings. So
above average, 102 ERA plus, but it's only 34 innings, so small sample size.
Very small sample size.
I think he's going to outperform his metrics.
I think so.
I mean, he's the number one ranked lefty in the minors.
Oh yeah, he tore the minor leagues up, which has kind of forced the Giants' hand to call him up.
Exactly.
At the end of the year there. I don't know how the Giants will do without pitching, but they need pitching, and that's certain, and guys like Melvin know it. He wants pitching. I think Farhan is content with where they're at, but I think you have to be aggressive now more than ever with those two guys still out there. And the way the market's going now, I mean, you had Bellinger and Chapman ask for way more money than they got. So I think now will be the time to pounce, especially with guys like Keaton Wynn getting hurt, Mason Black hurt. So you need pitching.
It also it doesn't make sense to me. Like Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery, they can't not play.
Yeah.
Someone has to.
Kimbrel a couple years ago.
Exactly.
Harper waited till Harper and Machado both. You remember that when they waited like a week before the season started to sign with the team.
Yep.
It's bad for baseball, but we'll get into that a little later. Let's talk about Cody Bellinger.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that contract.
Very weird contract. I mean, I think he deserves it. He had a great season. It obviously doesn't make the Cubs any better because they had him last year.
Right.
So really, they didn't improve at all with signing him. But I do think that he is a good fit there, and obviously he had a good season playing at Wrigley. Might as well stay.
I agree. 3-year, $80 million deal, 2 opt-outs, just like Chapman. Both Cody Bellinger and Matt Chapman are represented by Scott Boras. And like you said, this doesn't really impact the Cubs' chances, right? He was there last year. What the Cubs really needed was pitching. They got Justin Steele. Kyle Hendricks will give you innings, but he's just average. Cubs needed pitching. They got Nico Horner in the infield there. Dansby Swanson's there as well. Nice middle infield. Hopefully, Seiya Suzuki, didn't have the year everybody was expecting him to have, right?
I
But
don't remember hearing his name at all.
yeah, everybody was so hyped about him. Of course, the Giants were in the conversation to get him, and where did he go?
Is
Not
that
the Giants.
everybody?
That's how it goes. But
They still have Ian Happ.
you didn't hear his name at all, and hopefully he'll have a bounce back year. But I think the Cubs bringing back Bellinger helps the lineup, but it doesn't address the pitching situation. They were so close to the playoffs last year, and they just
Completely agree.
couldn't get there. They just collapsed. So maybe they should give Jake Arrieta a call and have him come back.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, Jameson Taillon's over there as well. Yancy Almonte in the bullpen. But nothing that really sticks out.
Hector Neris.
Drew Smiley almost threw a perfect game.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
I think
Keaton Thompson.
they did get Hector Neris for them bullpen, so that he might be closing out games.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and they have who they acquired from the Dodgers a couple weeks ago. Christopher Morel, who absolutely
fantastic.
tore up the minors and then came up in his first month back in the big leagues and tore it up as well.
Mm-hmm. On my fantasy team.
I mean, they've got some guys here. Alexander Canario, who was a part of the Chris Bryant trade back in 2021.
They also have
Pete Crow Armstrong.
Woo.
And the Giants
PCA.
legend Mike Tauchman.
Oh.
So a lot of names in that lineup, right? But when you look at the pitching, I mean, it's not looking too good.
It's not good.
Shoto Imanaga.
Oh, I forgot about him. The lefty from Japan.
That's right.
He didn't have the best numbers ever. He's no Yoshinobu Yamamoto, but let's see what he can do.
Yep.
Wrigley, not the biggest ballpark in the world, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Park.
who knows?
Got some bad memories there. Javier Baez in 2016 off of Johnny Cueto.
I remember it. I remember right into the baskets.
Eighth inning. Terrible. Terrible. All right, well, let's talk about the man behind these contracts, Scott Boras.
Oh, okay.
You know him. You love him.
I do love him. I mean, he's been known to force negotiating some sort of mega deals for his players in the past. Matt Chapman, as you talked about, he was supposed to be getting way more money than he really did. I think that Bellinger could have got more money too, but for some reason, he just keeps waiting, and these players are forced to get less than they really need because they have to sign somewhere.
Yep.
It's crazy. I was doing some research here. Boras has signed 9 of the top 23 $200 million contracts in Major League history, which is crazy. Wow. People like Bryce Harper, which we know, we waited till the last day to sign. Steven Strasburg right after he won the World Series and World Series MVP, and we know what happened there. Sorry, guy.
Poor guy.
Even Anthony Rendon, same thing. That guy doesn't want to play baseball.
Nope, it's his job.
And he got 9 years, 324. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. 7 years, $245 million for a guy that doesn't even want to do it. So
he's got guys like Alex Rodriguez, right? Max Scherzer, Garrett Cole, Corey Seager as well. 10-year, $325 million for Seager.
And then, as you said, still 3 more. The guys that are currently unsigned.
Yep.
So, I just think that the way he's doing things, it's not good for baseball.
Yeah, how does
making all his players wait and wait and wait.
How does it influence the league as a whole? We've heard a lot of people like you now saying it's an issue, and I agree, but it is not good for baseball. But why do you think people say this? Why do you think that is?
I think that has to do with the players that are still out there. These teams clearly need help, and he's the one that's forcing them not to sign because he thinks that they deserve more than what's being offered. So then these teams just aren't going to sign them if the asking price is too high. And then these players who deserve to get paid for how good they are, Snell just won the Cy Young, they're just not going to get signed.
Yep.
It's terrible.
Yep. And I think if you're friends with Matt Chapman, or you're in the Chapman camp, right, and you see that the asking price was $150 million, and your agent's telling you, oh, you're worth $150 million. The Blue Jays offer you $100 million. Scott Boras says, no, we're not going to take that. You're worth way more than that. And then you sign with the Giants for $54 million. Do you pull Matt Chapman aside and say, hey, dude, maybe it's time to part ways with Scott Boras here. He promised you over 150 million, and we had to settle for 54. What do you do there? What do you think?
It's a hard question to answer. I want to say yes because clearly he just didn't do what he was promised to do, and because if he did do that, he's taking a huge cut. You know, he has some sort of huge cut
Yep.
to be Scott Boras. But I want to say no too because he is Scott Boras, and you know that you're going to get some sort of a deal if you're with him.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
it's really, what do you want? It's hard to answer.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Double-edged sword, I think. Definitely. Everybody wants Scott Boras as their agent because everybody knows who Scott Boras is. Personally, I know 2 agents in all of sports. I know Scott Boras and Rachel Luba. We don't have to get into Rachel Luba because I think Trevor Bauer should be on a team, but that's a conversation for another episode, right? Scott Boras has been around for a long time. He gets players big deals, as we've talked about, but in instances like this, I think this might be the first time that owners are kind of getting together and saying, we're not going to stand for this garbage, this asking for so much money when the market doesn't allow that. We're not going to pay them that if the market doesn't call for that. So, I think it just kind of depends on the year. I think it depends on the market, and yeah, I don't know. I think I'd stick with Boras, but people might disagree.
I don't know. I mean, people got to do what they got to do. They want their money. I mean, we see people like Tawny. He wasn't a Boras guy.
Nope. And he got
a
money.
big. Nobody saw 700 million coming.
No, we were
But then
thinking.
we've got
We were
people like,
thinking. Low 6.
I mean, at first I was thinking
high
4.
5, low 6, 4. Yeah. Nobody thought it would be 700 million. That blew my mind. And of course, who were the front runners? The Giants. Who got them? Not the Giants.
Not the Giants. You know who else is Scott Boras' client? Sneaky. That isn't talked about very much.
Let's hear it.
Is Jung-Hoo Lee.
Oh, wow, really?
And people thought that he was going to get between 80 and 85 million for his talents over in Korea, but he got 113 million for, was it 6 years, 5 years with the Giants?
I believe it was 5 years. 6 year, 113. Sorry.
6 years, 113 million. So way more than what most people thought, and most likely way more than anybody else was offering him. So the Giants may be overpaid, but
seems like the Boras trademark here, an opt out after 2027 for Lee.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's a wrap for the inaugural episode of Innings Insights here. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the players in spring training, the signings of Chapman, and how Scott Boras impacts Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and just be sure that you subscribe if you want to follow along with all these in-depth discussions, interviews, and everything that's happening in the baseball world.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep swinging for the fences.